Hello, everybody. Let's give it a second here while everybody jumps on. Zoom lets everybody in. Good. All right. Fantastic. Welcome. You know what? Let's start. Carrie always starts these off if you've been to these with where you're from. But I got two questions here. What just to keep it on theme. Chat stream. Where are we from, and what generation are we? So I want to see what we've got generations. I think I know where we're going to skew more heavily to. Um, Post them in the chat there. Okay. What are we? Atlanta, Gen X, Gen X, Gen X, Gen X. Lots of Gen X. Oh, we got a boomer. Oh, we got a Gen Y. Ah, that's exciting. Okay, so we got Gen Y, Gen X. We have a young boomer. We have boomers, Gen X's, boomers. Okay, so we've only got one Gen Y so far. Fantastic. Oh, we got a millennial. There we go. Thank you, Crystal. What is the other generation we're missing?
Z.
What was it?
Gen Z.
Gen Z. That's right. That's it. That's right. Okay, good. Good. Fantastic. All right. Well, welcome everybody. And this is actually a live session that I just kind of wanted to do selfishly, right? Because this is a topic that absolutely fascinates me. And I love the fact that we can get these incredible experts and thought leaders and have these kind of conversations, and then we all get to take part in that. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Derek Gehl. I'm the CEO here at MEA. And today we are going to be what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about sort of intergenerational the intergenerational challenges, opportunities that exist in the workforce today. And we're at such an interesting time. For the first time in history, we have, I think, potentially five generations working together in the workforce. And from what I see, every generation brings its strengths, every generation brings its challenges with it. Um, and I think every generation also thinks they were the greatest or the greatest piece of the workforce as well. And to an extent, I think every one of them brings something really interesting to that. And so looking for a real expert to bring into this conversation. And we have somebody today that I think is going to be an excellent thought partner in this. And she is an entrepreneur, a community builder, who has been sparking this cross generational collaboration in the workforce for a while. She actually founded and built a startup that literally connected thousands of professionals across generations, and was actually named as the next avenue influencer in aging. So she's kind of reshaping how younger and older professionals are connecting in the workplace. And she's worked in venture capital marketing, community building, et cetera, et cetera. And it was funny, just before the call, she's like, oh yeah, I just recognized I actually have a chapter in like an Oxford textbook on intergenerational communication. So she knows what she's talking about. I'd like to welcome Charlotte Japp Crater. Charlotte, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Derek. Hi, MEA. It's so good to see you all. I'm glad that we have some cameras on. It's great to be here, and I'm really excited to chat about the. Oops, sorry, was I on mute?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, but it's great to be here. Hi, everyone. I love that the cameras are on. I love that we can see some faces and
Yeah.
the age diverse workforce that we've got going. Yeah, this is great. I actually was a guest instructor at MEA in Baja a couple years ago, which was really, really special. And we were
Mm.
talking about basically this exact topic. So good to be here with you all.
And I honestly, that was one of my favorite things about MEA is you're an MEA alum. Just the incredible, interesting people that we get through MEA every single week, that end up on calls like this and stuff. So let's dig in here. We're in a really unusual moment in time, one that's kind of unprecedented in the fact that we have five generations in a workforce at once, right? So let's talk about that and maybe start at a high level. Like, what are the pain points you're seeing right now, and what are the opportunities?
Yes, we're at the five generation workforce. And when I started my company CIRKEL, which doesn't exist anymore, but we had a pretty nicely balanced five generations, across Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, boomers, and then maybe silent generation was less represented. And I was looking at some data that said that millennials are now about like 70% of the workforce, which is like insane. It almost sounds too high for me to believe that.
Yeah. The math isn't
Like,
mathing there.
I
Um,
don't know. It's not mathing for me either, but I think generally millennials have just taken up more space, we can say,
yeah.
as we've gotten older. And the first millennials to turn 50, I think we'll do that in about 4 years. So we are an aging
Okay.
group. So it is moving up. But I think what has been really difficult is that the traditional career, which used to be kind of a ladder, is now more like a jungle gym. And that is actually a really liberating and good thing because we all want to do a lot of different things and we want to take career breaks. We want to go back to school. We want to pivot careers and start new careers. But the challenges there are that we also have a situation where you could be managed by someone who is younger than you. And so that traditional setup where, the older you get, the more senior you become, and maybe the more people who are younger than you are sort of reporting to you. That's been broken. And I think that there are a lot of tension points there of like how to navigate a power
Mm,
dynamic where age is not equally related to more power. The older you are, the more power you have. It's not like that anymore. And I think that's a really big pain point and something that I've heard a lot of people talk about. And then with that, which I think is maybe a more overarching challenge, is communication, just because depending on where you sit on the age spectrum, you will be more comfortable with certain types of, channels of communication, whether it's face to face, which I think is pretty universally beloved, but some people might be more comfortable texting or being on Slack or some sort of
mhm,
like text channel versus picking up a phone and giving someone a call out of the blue, unscheduled. And this has been like a
mhm.
funny thing. I'm sure many of you in the audience have had this experience where maybe you've called someone up and they were really kind of shocked to get a phone call. Like, you didn't put this on my calendar. I wasn't expecting this. I'm not prepared. And that used to be the norm. So, those are some of the sort of pervasive themes. And then I have some like other things as well that I, wanted to share on the challenges part. But I don't know if there's anything there that you wanted to
Yeah, no, I mean,
pick
there's
up on.
there's so many things to unpack with that. I was just laughing when you were talking about the phone thing too, because I remember, I mean, my son's 17 now. I think it was probably when he was 15. I called him and he picked it up and didn't say anything. And I'm like, "Hello, are you there?" And he's like, "Yeah, what?" Typical teenagers. And then we had this conversation. They just hung up. I'm like, I recognize that he doesn't even really know the etiquette of a traditional phone call.
Yep.
Like they don't, and when you call me, it's like, why are you calling me? I'm like,
Right.
because I
Like, was it
pay
a
for your
mistake?
phone.
Pocket dial?
That this is what we do. So okay, so we've got two kind of directions here, or challenges. Like if we look at it, there's people that are being managed by younger people, and then there's navigating that, and then there's the managing this younger workforce as well. And I think those are two kind of separate issues. I'd love to dive into that and understand that better. So, from what are you seeing in terms of the challenges of being managed by a younger manager, which I forget the number, but I heard it. How many people now have younger managers is
Yeah, I
huge.
don't have the number either. I'm sure it's at
It's
least
enormous.
30%. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think it's so yeah. It was interesting with when I started CIRKEL, which was this community of a lot of
Hmm.
different age groups, from 20 to 70. I thought we were trying to help people make transitions in their careers by expanding their professional and personal networks outside of their age bubble. But a lot of people joined because they just didn't have a third space to chat about what it's like or understand the experience of a younger professional. And maybe at work they had this like, traditional hierarchy of managing someone
Mhm.
who's younger or older, but it wasn't necessarily the space to like ask, what are your goals? Like what do you want out of a manager? How can I be better to someone who's your age at work? So that was really interesting, and it opened my eyes to the fact that we don't have a lot of opportunities to like dig into ways we can optimize for managing someone from a different age, if it's older or younger. Um, and you're being, there's a lot of baggage when you're in a workplace and you're being judged on performance, and your compensation is tied to how well you manage someone or what your manager thinks of you. So I think that is really important to have like third spaces to just understand, what people from different age groups are going through, and
Mhm.
what they want out of work, so that you can get better, set um, that trajectory for them. Um, yeah, I guess that goes in many different directions. And I think, and this is something we've talked about as well, but with hybrid or remote work, those touch points to understand like the goals of someone that you work with become fewer and farther between, and take maybe a little bit more effort to set up. So you don't have
Mhm.
as many natural water cooler moments,
Mhm.
and every Zoom call becomes a little bit more fraught because it's like you're setting up time to talk. It's not as natural as getting to know someone, in person. So
Yeah. So, okay, well, let's talk about, I don't know if you want to call them cliches, stereotypes, or realities, in terms of the different generations, right? So you hear, boomers resist change, millennials need meaning, Gen X's are skeptical. Um, what do you observe? And I mean, I know there's going to be a spectrum in every generation, but if you had to kind of, if you could sort of summarize, okay, these key generations in the workforce right now, what do you see in terms of what is true about them, what works for them, maybe what works against them in that intergen setting?
yeah, this is so tough. And I think that
Yeah.
we all would poo-poo, stereotypes for us and our generations. And a lot of these broad strokes and ways we describe different age groups can often be related to just where they sit on the age hierarchy, at
Yeah.
work, saying that the early career talent is just they don't get it, they don't know how to do their job well, they're not very good, maybe they don't really care as much as someone who's been in it longer, and maybe someone at the top of the food chain who's older and more experienced is stuck in their old ways. So like we sort of have to break that standard, because just because someone is in a generation doesn't mean they were always a certain age, right? Like the
Hmm.
boomers, I'm sure the boomers here would be really proud of all that they lived through in their teens and 20s, and how much youth culture that brought about into the grand scheme of things. So sometimes it's hard to remember people like, just because they are a certain age today doesn't mean they were always that age. And millennials are a big generation and will be, a big older generation one day soon. So that's always very interesting, and I'm sure that comes up a lot in the MEA cohorts. But I think in terms of stereotypes, one that I'm very interested in is what's happening with Gen Z. And I know we don't have a lot of Gen Zs here,
Hmm.
but they went from being like this new, they're like the college kids, like during COVID, they were in school. And then now they are the generation coming into the workforce. And it's hard to avoid the topic of COVID, because they did experience school and kind of early foundational years in a way that none of us will ever really be able to relate to, like
Hmm.
remote learning, not seeing their friends, being in a home environment for a lot of those learning years with their immediate family.
Hmm.
These are things that like are kind of mind blowing today, and that was only 5 years ago. And I can imagine in the future
Hmm.
it'll be even more crazy. Whoops. Did I? Okay.
You're good.
Sorry. Can
Nope.
you see me okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My
Nothing
screens
happened
are
on our end. You were
okay.
flawless.
Sorry. My screens were doing something weird. But I think they're really interesting because they are being asked to sort of carry the torch on a lot of advocacy issues, like when we talk about, um, gun violence and school shootings. Like Gen Z has been a voice in fighting against access to automatic weapons,
Hmm.
but that's a big burden for 15-year-olds, 20-year-olds. Like these are young people. So I think that they've been sort of given the stereotype of like they're going to change the world. Like we'll leave it to them. They have social media, they have influence, and they'll do that. But what can happen there is they can get really frustrated and hardened a little bit. Um, and so I was surveying some friends on the Gen Z stare. Like I don't know if
No, this
y'all
is
are
new.
familiar with what this is.
No, no, educate us.
So there's this sort of joke or observation on TikTok. A lot of people are making videos about this and they're saying, "Oh, the Gen Z stare is so annoying." It's basically when you walk up to someone, whether they're your cashier at a grocery store or they're your colleague in an office environment, and you walk up to them, and instead of making small talk or greeting you with a smile or I don't know, just trying to like be friendly, they just stare at you with like a blank look.
Huh.
And it's pretty interesting because the belief is that, on the one hand, they were during COVID not given a lot of like social engagement. And so they're not as good at socializing and doing small talk and things like that. And then on the other argument, there's that they just don't really want to entertain small talk because they don't believe in it. They'd rather just kind of move on to the meat of whatever it is that you want to talk about.
Well, do you think they do engage it? They're just more comfortable engaging on it through devices?
You mean engaging
Small
their,
talk through device, like through tech, like because
yeah.
I watch how much I mean I'll walk in and I've got a 27-year-old and a 17-year-old, right? And I'll walk in and they're all sitting in a room. Nobody's talking, but they're talking.
Yeah, right. They're like engaging with it with people who are not there. They're on their
Or
phone.
sometimes I think they're texting each other when they sit beside each other, right? Like it's
Yeah.
just such a and maybe it was the COVID impact.
Yeah.
It's a
It's hard to
hypothesis.
say.
It's a
I know.
hypothesis. Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
hard to say because I'm sure there are ripple effects of remote learning that we don't even really
Hmm.
know yet. Obviously, there's like the testing scores that are coming through and they're a bit, lower than we want them
Hmm.
to be. So all that is real. But yeah, I think it's Gen Z is really interesting. I worked with a couple Gen Z colleagues in a venture capital environment. So I was working in VC on a small team,
Hmm.
very multi-generational team. We had Gen Z, millennial was me and another, a couple Gen Xers, and then the general partners were baby boomers. So really like evenly, split across these groups. And there were some funny moments where I noticed my Gen Z colleagues just didn't really understand the etiquette of working in an office because that was new for them.
Yeah.
And so they would do little things that were really tiny, but I just remember as a millennial, who used to do 5 days in office or whatever, I was shocked. They had a friend come from another VC fund and work out of our office without asking permission from anyone. They just brought them up into the office building. And then the cherry on top was they sat this, visiting friend at our boss's desk because he was out that day. I was just
Uh,
like, of
uh,
all places to entertain this friend, like, why are you bringing them to our workplace, sitting them at our boss's desk? He could walk in, these things are like mind blowing for millennial because we,
hmm.
had a lot of this like traditional etiquette of what to do and not to do in an office. And Gen Zs are like sort of transitioning in and learning this stuff. And they're a little bit like, the word entitled did come up when I did a survey on what do we think of Gen Z. So there is a little bit of that.
Mm.
But it's going to change because they're going to go through work and learn things and
Sure, they're
probably,
young. They,
yeah.
they will evolve, and they will learn those, or the system's going to change,
Hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
probably a bit of both. Um, and so tell me what your position on this, and this is sort of my observation, is the generations that are coming up. So I'm a Gen X, the boomers, we put everything into work, right? The boomers, and the silent generation, that was, go to work for the same company, like the older boomers, for their whole life. And that's not as
Yeah.
much for Gen X and stuff like that. But, we put so much into our careers in many cases that was also our social circle in a lot of cases as well. Whereas what observe with, in some cases, the younger generation is work's work, but, outside of work, it's more experiential. And they're more balanced than we are, and less willing to sacrifice their soul for the the company they work for. In
Yeah.
some cases, I mean, does that resonate with what you've seen?
I think so. And again, it's like based on current events. I think that there's been a lot of disillusionment that's happened as a result of the last 10, 20 years of what's happened in the work world. Like millennials graduated into a recession and then
Hmm.
went through COVID. And I lost my job during COVID.
Hmm.
I wasn't working during the recession, but I think as it's less common to work at one place for your entire career, right? There's no
Hmm.
like gold watch waiting for you at the end of a term. Um, and so there is this different value base for, let's say, boomers who may have gotten like the reward of staying at a company for a long time and
Yeah.
have really seen the merits in that. But for, millennials and Gen Z, I think and I'm a millennial, we've felt like I actually have seen people who are new to a company come in and get paid better than me. Where's the loyalty in that? Or
Yeah.
I've been at a company for 3 years doing great work. And, when there's a problem with the business, a whole wave of us get let go and we're shocked about it. And so there's sort of this like detachment of putting all of your value base of yourself into your job necessarily, and maybe more of putting that into yourself as a 360 person with a career, but also interests outside of work,
Hmm.
family. We're trying to balance family life and friends. Um, and I think we just put less into that loyalty structure.
Hmm.
Um, and I think if anyone here is familiar with Cogenerate, which is another great organization, there's a woman, Marcy Albauer, who's on their leadership
Hmm.
team. And she wrote a whole book about the slash career and how it's becoming more and more prevalent that you are a slasher. You are a copywriter at an ad agency, but you're also a musician on TikTok or something. You could
Hmm.
do a lot of
Hmm.
different things and have a side hustle and all these passions. And I do think that we're moving in a direction where like people still care about work and the meaning that you get out of like doing well at something, but it's not going to be your 9 to 5 anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I've really noticed this over the last 5 years in particular, like post COVID, even during COVID as well, is when we're advertising, particularly for more junior positions and stuff, people just don't even show up for the job interviews.
Wow.
A- a-
That's
And th- a-
crazy.
and this isn't new. This is I've seen this historically in my previous company that I exited before I came to MEA. I've seen it in MEA. I've surveyed even networks around, and when hiring for more junior positions that are going to be filled by millennial and Gen Y, I would say so we've had some recent positions where we're talking 50% actually show up for interviews they've agreed to.
Wow.
And again, this isn't just isolated to MEA New Mexico. I've experienced, and so something's happening there, and I feel,
Mm.
and being a millennial, I wonder if companies have become less loyal to their employees.
Yeah.
And I think that is a byproduct of, the capitalistic society we work in, driving shareholder value, being having to be more ruthless. There's no pensions. I mean, it used to be you would stick with a company for a long time, even government after what happened over the last year. I mean, it used to be, hey, get a good government job, you got a pension, you're secure. Same here in Canada, it was the US. And
Yeah.
well, I mean, that security blanket just got shaken up big time. Um, and oh,
Oh, sorry. Oh, hold on one second.
you good? Oh, hopefully, hopefully we're not losing her. Ta-da. All right. Oh, interesting. So Laura said, I had a similar not showing up experience when I was teaching students at Yale. It happens everywhere, sadly. So this is something that is happening right now, and it is baffling as to I would love some thoughts. Oh, we just total. Oh no, Charlotte's still here. I have a feeling something's going on there. So let's continue this conversation um, until she comes back. I would love to hear from you guys and your experience. I mean, obviously, we're going to skew to the older. We've got the Gen X's, lots of boomers. I think we have one millennial, one Y. Um, any hypothesis or any thoughts on what's going on with that and why we're not getting that engagement? Anybody want to raise hands, speak up, go for it. Mark,
Yeah,
unmute.
so I do a lot of generational training as well, so I was curious what you guys are going to be doing here. One of the things is for these younger generations, we've got to remember that they've got the ability, for many of them, to drop back into the household and be with parents. Now, as a Gen Xer,
Yeah.
there was no way I was ever going to go back. Never. I would
Never.
live. I would live in a ditch. I would, eat grass. But when your parents are some of your best friends, and I mean, I've got 5 kids, so I understand what you're saying. I've got our oldest one living with us right now. He's 44, doing
Yeah.
transition back into from Florida to Colorado here. So when the house is open like this, and you've got jobs, and it's like, well, you may be interviewing for some of them. Maybe you took a job and you don't understand again the etiquette of reaching back out and going, oh, you're supposed to let them know that you're not showing up, or it's like, oh, I don't really want to do this, and you go, you don't, again, no loyalty, but you don't even think about, they don't even think about that. And then there is the safety net of coming back, so there's not the drive to necessarily sometimes get jobs as well.
So, and that's curious. Do you think it's us as parents that have sort of failed in some sense, or is it our academic institutions that, like, how did that happen where they don't feel the obligation to communicate and those, what we would consider common sense?
Well, but again, that's through our lens, right? So this is the beauty of all
Yes.
generational stuff is we see things through our myopic lens, and we believe that every other generation, if they would just be like us, then which other than Gen Xers, they're right. But we always believe that everybody, if they're just like us, the world will be spectacular like it is for us. But so part of it's the communication style like you were talking about
Yeah.
earlier. So when you can't communicate, when you're used to using these things to communicate, even when you're sitting next to each other, it's a different thing. And there is no end to your job. So if your job doesn't end at 5 o'clock and it goes 1 o'clock in the morning, I've got something I'm sending out. So it's all these I think these dynamics coming in that skew how we communicate and what our expectations are. And this is why you've got to have really clear communication with those younger generations.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Charlotte's back.
Sorry, workplace woes, getting kicked out of a room.
All
I
good.
think
All
we can
good.
all relate.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Well, you're back, so that's great. All right. Where were we when you left?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I know we're talking continuing that conversation about the younger generation. So, okay, so looking at this group, we skew older because this is an MEA audience. We're Gen X and Boomers. What are some of the things that you see us doing, the mistakes that we're making, trying to manage, communicate, or work with millennials, Gen Y?
This is
For,
very, very specific. I'm
yeah,
gonna start tiny,
yeah,
which is canceling meetings. So meetings and touch points, like opportunities for if it's a monthly, a weekly, whatever, um, they're important because they create that trust between
Hmm.
your colleagues. And for me, I can speak from like my personal experience. I have a monthly meeting with the top partners I work at a law firm. And there's that traditional hierarchy. These are people who are Gen X, sort of like boomer cusp, and they're really busy. They're very successful. They have very full lives inside of the workplace and outside, very successful people. And we have this one monthly meeting. And over the summer, when there was a lot of travel and schedules get moved around, every meeting that we had for each monthly meeting got canceled. And it was really frustrating because that was my one slice of time where I could really build a relationship with them, build the trust, allow them to get to know me and all the work that I was doing, because otherwise the work can easily get sort of unnoticed. And I've noticed it myself when on the flip side, if I've had interns and I don't even really know what we're talking about, but we have a weekly standing meeting, I've been guilty of canceling those meetings because I have other things that feel like the higher priority that day.
Hmm.
And so it's a really, really tiny thing, but I think we're all probably thinking back to one moment or another when we've been canceled on or we've canceled on someone else. And it's just one small gesture that shows like, I'm showing up for you. I want to have space to get to know each other better. I want to work closely with you. And so that's a very, very specific example in the workplace where honoring that time can actually go a long way. And I think the ripple effects, in my case, when those meetings have been canceled, has actually created a sort of hesitation on my behalf where, and maybe I would knock on their office and say hi in the morning. Now I'm like, well, they've canceled those meetings. Maybe they really want to be left alone more, and I shouldn't really like go up to them as much as I would like to. So you want to create more cohesive moments of coming together, and that's really important. So not to say it's a Gen X boomer problem, because everyone does that, but I think being sensitive about who you're meeting with and honoring that time is really important.
Hmm. So,
Um,
oh, keep
yes.
going,
No,
keep going.
no,
Yeah,
I was just trying to think. That was such a like a tiny little thing.
yeah, yeah,
I think that I'll go super, super macro now, which is I think I'm sure this is not news to anyone, but it's really tough, like from a financial standpoint, to be a young person today.
yeah,
We know that wages increase more slowly than they have historically. So people are getting paid less, and they're not getting as much of that salary bump that maybe the boomers enjoyed. Education costs are up. It's very expensive to go to college. It's very expensive to get a degree. Housing is more expensive. So there are just a lot of realities of being a young person and trying to build a life where it's
yeah.
more expensive, and it feels harder than it was for our parents. Like my parents are boomers.
But
So
it doesn't feel harder. It is harder,
it's
right?
harder.
It is harder. This is the first time in history that and this is on us. This is the first time in history that the generations coming up right now, millennials, Y, are doing worse than their parents did.
Yeah,
And that's a problem that we need to solve.
it is a real problem. And I think there's a looming there are looming big problems coming down the pipeline. If
Yep.
you imagine retirement today already feels very difficult for someone who's getting towards 65, having enough saved. It's going to be even worse if you're dealing with student loans or like insane
Yeah.
mortgages or the things, the responsibilities that we have just today as younger people. So I only say that to say, I think a lot of younger, the Gen Zs and the millennials would love to see just a little bit more empathy and understanding of that situation, and not to say like we're blaming boomers for having more wealth, than we may when we're that age. It's just
Hmm.
about acknowledging that we're in a different spot and it's tough. And I think we just want to hear more of that sort of
Yeah.
empathy.
Yeah. 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 I've had this debate numerous times with, friends and sort of the Gen X, and they push back and say, well, they just expect too much. And I always fall back to the first home you bought. What was it as a multiple of your current annual or of your annual income at the time of buying it, right? And I live in Vancouver, so it's really we're fourth most expensive in the world. So this is a real outlier. But when I was back in 2000, I think I bought my first home. It was like two times my annual salary. Now it's to get a starter home here is 8 to 10 times. The playing field
Yeah.
has changed entirely, and I get it. Like, it's a challenge for that generation.
Oh yeah.
So, one of the things that you talk about is building empathy across age groups, right? Um, and let's dig into that. Like, I think it's easy to say, right? But how do we, as X or boomers or even younger generations, millennial Y, how do you show up with empathy for a different generation? What does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah. It's definitely easier said than done, especially when
Yeah.
we're talking about a workplace. And I think what made a lot of the introductions that my team used to make across generations so successful was because even though these were in the context of work and mentoring, we always tried to outline what two people had in common. And a
Hmm.
lot of time, that commonality had nothing to do with who they are professionally. It could be, how many kids they have, or where they grew up, or a really cool hobby that they have, or something. And these are like the parts of us that we don't always bring to work. So it can be
Hmm.
really hard when you're working on a project with people from different age groups, and you're feeling like there's a tension there, and you're not quite communicating beautifully, or you're not trusting each other the way that you should. And it's hard to just flip flop and be like, you know what, let's just get an ice cream and talk about our childhoods and see like if we get along or something, find
Hmm.
another path to connect. But I do think so much of that is important. Like we did some surveying with the National Innovation Center for Aging in Newcastle. They're called,
Hmm.
it's, NICA. And we did a survey to understand where people felt ageism the most in the workplace. And it really shocked me because what they said was basically the water cooler or the lunchroom or wherever were
Hmm.
social spaces at work where they felt the most excluded. If there's a group of people who are all 20 something year olds getting lunch together and you don't have anyone to sit with, you're not going to go sit down, and they're not necessarily beckoning you to join them. And those are the moments where people felt the most excluded, and they felt ageism was the most sort of prevalent. It wasn't actually like the meeting, talking about the project due next week. So I think
Hmm.
it's being mindful about those gray areas where maybe it's a retreat, maybe it's the happy hour on Thursday that you usually don't go to, but those are actually the opportunities to build bridges in more like human ways where we can actually have conversations about what people care about, what they
Yeah.
do on the weekend, like what their value system looks like, and then finding like really fun overlaps that you may not have found when you're looking at a spreadsheet together.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So now looking at cross generation collaboration, where do you see it has the biggest impact on organizations? Like when they implement a practice of actually supporting this in the workplace, what are the benefits that have been tangibly measured?
Yeah, there have been some studies. I think Mercedes had a really interesting assembly line study that they did to see what if we had an assembly line that was made up of workers from different generations, and they totally outperformed the assembly lines that were all of the same generation. So, like, there is data that backs up the fact that people are more productive when they have different brains from different generations participating on projects together. I think the beauty of these multi-gen teams comes out when you're trying to get something from strategy time to execution. And I've experienced this myself where I was tasked to put a really ambitious conference together, and I had my baby boomer boss really wanted this conference to happen. It was about drones and robotics, which I knew nothing about, nothing about it. And he gave me the infrastructure, which was like, it's about drones and robotics. It's going to be an all-day conference, and I want to have a mix of panels and keynotes, and I want to have about 200 people there. And he set that standard, and then he gave me the freedom to fill in the blanks with things that I could research, I could get creative. He kind of gave me like the box, the sandbox, and then I was able to really like have the ownership of, let me get creative, let me get curious, and I'm going to do some research and come back to you. And we had weekly touch points on this. And then I had a Gen X colleague who was kind of helping me with this, who knew more about drones and robotics. And he was the one making introductions, kind of unlocking, opening those doors to speakers. He was the one finessing the programming once I showed it to him. And so it was a really beautiful way where someone with the experience who said, I know what good looks like, and I'm going to give you the platform to like build this thing, which is really empowering, giving me that freedom. But I'm going to be here for you for when you want to talk about it, get feedback, make tweaks. And then you're going to have someone over here who's really in the industry unlocking these components that are going to make it successful, that are going to give it that like A+ shining star with those great speakers on the panels. So that for me felt like a really nice example of like the experience plus the curiosity and the newness of someone who's younger and doesn't know the industry that well, and then all like given that platform to make it real. So I guess I would call that like production. Like, I don't know, maybe it's also that assembly line, like the production of strategy to execution.
Yeah. So, okay, we're going to open up for questions here in a couple of minutes. So if you have questions, I'll open it up here shortly. But last question. I mean, like right now, the workplaces are shifting fast, and I think AI is completely changing the landscape. And raising kids that are now walking into that workplace, there's so much uncertainty, particularly in roles and jobs that historically were the places you sent them. Knowledge work, right? If you want to have the great career, knowledge work is finally being threatened for the first time because of AI. Looking at this and the generations coming up, what are the cracks that you're seeing in this traditional job model that we've had?
Yeah. So it's actually very interesting because I think there was a lot of fear a few years ago that AI would replace older workers' jobs.
Yeah.
But actually, AI is replacing the youngest workers' jobs.
Mm-hmm.
AI is able to make us very efficient when it comes to taking a lot of data and text and summarizing it within seconds, reading things, research, if you're looking for data, if you're all that stuff that used to be very, very tedious, and it actually doesn't require a ton of like, I don't know how to put this the right way, but it doesn't take a lot of experience as a professional to do some of those things.
Yeah.
And AI is making that possible, and it's basically replacing the earliest career band of talent. So that terrifies me because we are already seeing that the hiring is being impacted for Gen Z. The unemployment rate, I mean, this has been a hot topic in the US news, but like the unemployment rate is higher than we thought it was. It's like 9+%. And that's the average across the country. 9+% for Gen Z, and it's half that for the average person. So Gen Z is twice as likely to be unemployed as someone who is millennial, Gen X, or boomer. So that's a very tangible example of how AI is creating some cracks in the workforce. I think the beauty there is being a Swiss Army knife, like I think a lot of us here are, where you understand technology, you can use some AI tools, but you have career experience and industry experience where you can look at data and analyze it and say, this looks right, or I'm going to take that little chunk of data and plug it into this much more complicated project. And I'm going to, create this whatever it is, a conference, or I'm going to
Hmm.
put this big project together, and AI is a tool that I'm using to make that happen more efficiently.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of us here are actually in a good position if we know how to use a chat GPT or Claude or something, to do research and be very quick and efficient with that. But I am concerned about, early career talent.
Hmm.
And I think that we need to create more on ramps, on ramps and off ramps, which is a whole other conversation. But on ramps, like, how do we revolutionize internships? How do we create more apprenticeships programs where Gen Z is getting more real world work experience when they're in college, paid,
Yeah.
ideally.
Yeah.
So things like that, where it's like we need to prepare them better for the workforce. AI is also impacting hiring platforms. And writing a resume when AI is reading it is very different from writing a resume when a human is reading it.
Ooh, yeah.
As, so that's another thing to be thinking about. Um, yeah, it's interesting. It's a wild world of AI and work. And the good news is, I think the reality of how AI is used internally, like when I think about my job, it's really just these tools that are making research, and data crunching faster and more easy. We're
Yeah.
not quite at the point where like my whole day to day is AI driven, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. It's interesting as humans, I think we've always been really bad at um, long-term consequence and adapting today to prevent long-term consequence. And a lot of that is driven by I think our capitalistic society that's, shareholder value, immediate return. And I think this is going to, put it bluntly, bite us in the ass when we have a generation that hasn't been mentored, that hasn't had that opportunity to gain those skills so that they can operate the AI with the level of efficiency and that knowledge and experience that our generations have had. And um, so yeah, these are big, big topics. And I'd love to open it up for thoughts, questions, insights from this group as well. So if you want to hit the little hand button and I'll unmute you and away we go. Um, the oh, one sec. And yeah, so while we're waiting, if there's any questions come up, let's talk about when you're dealing with the younger generations, what does a dream job look like to them versus, you know, the Gen X, the boomer?
Um, a lot of Gen Zs want to be content creators full time, which is pretty wild. And I'm not sure if everyone knows what that looks like, but basically being, an influencer on TikTok and having brands that are paying you to promote items, to attend events, to create videos about your experience, basically engaging with those products. So that's pretty crazy that like suddenly there's a new career channel that's opened up around, being an online face, who is basically a little entrepreneur working with brands. So
Hmm.
that's pretty interesting. Going back to the slash career, right? You could basically do that on the side. And I've watched TikTokers, who've talked about that transition of doing it on the side, being so good at it, and suddenly they're making
Hmm.
more money from these partnerships than they do in their 9 to 5 job, and they go for it full time. Um, but taking a step back, I actually think that we are collectively moving more towards entrepreneurship in some way or other. Both of my parents actually moved out of, corporate life at around the age of 50 and started their own businesses, small businesses. And I think that a lot of people my age aspire to similar transitions where they want to be more in control of their time, their schedule. They are passionate about something and they feel like the traditional infrastructure of working at a large company doesn't allow them that ownership that they're looking for. So that's something
Hmm.
that I'm seeing a lot of. And I guess the question is, can we adapt workplaces to allow for more of that entrepreneurial feeling, that ownership internally?
Hmm.
Can we give that to them in more traditional jobs? And or can we create more fractional roles that allow older workers to come back to work,
Mm,
or maybe off ramp into whatever retirement looks like in a more fractional way. I'm seeing that among my peers. I have some teammates that are full time, and I have some teammates that are part time, and I think that that flexibility is going to become more normal.
hmm. So, okay, so question for you. So you're saying that, people want to have more ownership, right? So they want to do their own thing. Do you do you think there's also an element, because I see this with, again, my 17-year-old, that first of all, when we grew up, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have algorithms, we knew what our parents told us, right? If we had entrepreneurial parents that ran businesses and stuff like that, entrepreneurship was on our radar. If we didn't, we were typically, in the path of, I grew up in a farming community. So many of the guys that I grew up with, guess what they're doing now? They're farmers, right? Um, y- y- you know, so that said, though, in the algorithm on TikTok or on Instagram, they're getting served up biz ops, business opportunities, right? Like, and we know the internet is rife with business opportunity. Many of them are BS, but nonetheless, it's opening their mind to, oh, I could make money like this, or I see this person, as you said, influencing and stuff like that. And what I'm hearing as well is, I want freedom. I
Hmm.
want to work on my own terms. Do you think that's plays as much a role as the ownership? Less? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, the freedom is important, and I guess the distinction there is money. Like, are people motivated by, is it more money, and having ownership allows them like uncapped opportunities to just make a lot of money, or it's having the freedom at whatever income level comes with that, is that good enough? um and so I think something that we were talking about in the template a little bit was ambition, and I think people are motivated by different things at all ages. I have
Hmm.
friends that actually are not really motivated by money, even though they
Yeah.
live in New York and they want to stay here, but they went back to social work, to school for social work, and they want to be a
Hmm.
social worker, and they understand that they're going to have more freedom because they'll have their own clients and patients, but they're not going to make as much money as they did working in, big corporate. So it's interesting. It's like, I think freedom is going to be a through line. And then the question
Yeah.
on top of that is, what else needs to come with that for you to be content at work? Is it
Interesting.
your own business, or is it finding that freedom within the infrastructure of, a big company?
So, this brings me to the next question. Do you think the younger millennials and Gen Ys are less motivated by money than boomers and Gen X?
Uh, I really struggle with that question. I think on the one hand, going back to what we were saying with our, you know, the landscape of what it costs to be a young person today. And I live in New York, so a lot of my friends are motivated by money. Um, but I don't know, and I don't want to get eaten alive in the comments
No,
about
no,
that.
no.
So,
You're not going to. This is a no judgment zone. In fact, I throw this out to the group. What do you guys think? Do you think our Gen X boomers were more motivated by money or less motivated by money than the upcoming generations? I mean, we have a lot of people on here that I guarantee you that have raised Gen Y, have raised millennials. I'm
mm,
curious. Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know what you guys think after raising these. And keep in mind, it's never black and white. It's a spectrum, right? But where are we shifting more towards? Um, I see them less motivated by money, but almost because in some cases they feel it is almost a fruitless effort. Like they're
yeah.
pushing water uphill. So they're like, screw it. I'm going to live a good life. I'm not going to worry about, what my mom and dad did, saving and busting ass to buy that home and to
Mhm.
sock away for retirement. They're like, screw it. What's the point? I'm not getting the home, so I'm going to have fun along. Does that resonate with you as a millennial?
I think it does, in the sense that that disillusionment is there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, if I'm on my deathbed one day, will I
Mm-hmm.
regret not working more? I don't think so. will I regret that I didn't make more money? I don't think so. I think um, I would be thinking about
Mm-hmm.
time spent with family and finding purpose and meaning. So
Mm-hmm.
I do think that narrative is very much alive with young people today,
Mm-hmm.
especially to that point of like the infrastructure might not take care of you. Like you need to give yourself what you need to feel good. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but someone might say, well, the government 40 years ago, offered more social services, so people didn't need to chase after high-paying jobs because they had more support.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like can go in all kinds of directions. But meaning is definitely really important, I think, for finding purpose and meaning, and that does seem to be more of like a zeitgeist
Mm.
across generations. In
Yeah.
2025, I think everyone is looking for purpose and meaning in a
Yeah.
way that feels novel.
Yeah. And Marla, you're right. My experience is actually that generation, they are great savers, which is interesting. I just find their priority is maybe more on experiential, not saving it for the next house. And again, I don't want to apply stereotypes, but it is when you say it, I get it. Um, and and to that point, I also do agree that the upcoming generations are going to figure it out. 100%. And every generation goes, we're the greatest generation, and the next generations are screwed. Albeit, I don't think our generations have set them up for success in a lot of ways, and we've created a lot of obstacles and barriers for those upcoming generations. And as a parent, I that worries me, but I also have faith that they're smart, they're creative, and they're going to solve a lot of the problems that we left them with. But I would love to see ways we can support them sooner than later. Um,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's key, that it's not us on our own or, future generations on their own, that we all can be there for them, um, because the world is going to change. It's going to look different. And
yeah.
it doesn't feel good to be told, like, you'll figure it out. And I figured it out on my own. So you're going to figure it out on your own or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, on that note, I think we're almost at the top of the hour. And Charlotte, awesome. Thank you. I thank you for this conversation. It was thought-provoking, and there's no easy answer for any of the generations, I think, at this point. And yeah, thank you everybody for showing up. And I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. And I think we'll call this one a wrap.
Thank you
Take care,
so
everybody, and we'll
much.
we'll see you next time.